Welcome to another edition of Reigns on the Cardinals podcast. Rob Reigns, Mike Reigns, STLSportspage.com, coming to you on the Cardinals' day off on Thursday. What a good week it was for the Cardinals, Mike. They've won 5 in a row.
It was a good week. Anytime you come off a sweep of a division opponent is always a good sign.
Unfortunately, it cost manager Derek Shelton of the Pirates his job because he was fired on Thursday after the Cardinals swept that series from the Pirates. But of course, not just the result of those 3 games. There's been a lot of things going on with that Pirate ball club. We're going to get to a lot of specific talks about the Cardinals here in a second. Also, going to talk about our road trip. You and I spent part of this week up in Peoria. Got a chance to actually visit with Chaim Bloom for a few minutes. He was in town. We have some more things coming up on that our trip and what we're doing here just a little bit later on the podcast. But it was a good time.
It was a good time. Yeah. I am always, passionate about minor league baseball. And I know you are too. It's always, it's a unique experience that's different than Major League Baseball. And anyone that hasn't been to a minor league game really needs to check it out.
Yeah, for those who maybe don't know all of your background, you worked in minor league baseball for a team called the Normal Corn Belters for a while, and also worked in the league office of the Frontier League. So you're well acquainted with operations
also,
at that level,
and also for the Gateway Grizzlies. So I've been a little bit all over for sure. But minor league baseball is just a different brand of baseball altogether, right? You get to be a little bit closer to the action. You get to see some of the stars up close before they become homegrown stars here in St. Louis, where they're a little bit more, I don't want to say standoffish, but it's harder to maybe get an autograph or get close with them.
Yeah, encourage everybody to take that road trip up to Peoria. We'll talk about it again here later on in this edition of the Reigns on the Cardinals podcast, brought to you by our friends at the Drury Hotels, Archwell Health, all of our other great sponsors here on the website. Hope you check out all of our content, including a story that we also had up there earlier this week on Brian Alizawi, who is maybe a name that nobody knows, but he's the mental skills and well-being coordinator for the Cardinals, and is actually one of the people that his real life an actor playing him is featured in the new movie Warfare that's out. We had a chance to talk to him about he was 18 years in the Navy SEALs and now works for the Cardinals. So that story's up on the site earlier this week. If you happen to miss it, you can check out on STLSportSpace.com. Also encourage you to look at your movie listings and see if Warfare is still playing at a movie theater around town. I saw it last week, and it's quite a movie. So about a battle in Iraq that Brian went in. And there's actually an actor that plays him in the movie. So I encourage everybody to check out the story and check out the movie as well. But on to the Cardinals conversation, Mike. As we mentioned, 5 in a row, swept the Pirates, now back to 500, 19-19. First time they've been there since April 16th. But the good news is 15-6 at home, tie the Dodgers for the most wins at home. But now they got to go back on the road.
They do have to go back on the road. But as we talked about, May's a new month, right? We wanted to turn the page from April, and you're starting off, 5-2 to start the month here, which is great. 2 losses against the Mets, but then next thing you know, you turn around at 5 in a row. So
the Cardinals are 4-13 on the road on Friday night after the day off on Thursday. They begin a 9-game, 3-city, 10-day trip. They go 3 in Washington against the Nationals, move up I-95 to play 3 in Philadelphia against the Phillies, and then wind up that trip next weekend in Kansas City with 3 games against the Royals. So it's not going to be an easy stretch for the Cardinals.
It will not be easy, no. I'm looking forward. I will be in Kansas City for those games, so looking forward to that. That should be a good time.
Yeah, okay, on to some Cardinal conversations based on one game, the Pirates series. Matthew Liberatore dueling Paul Skeens. We'll talk more about that in a second specifically. But here's my question to you. Have the Cardinals finally won the Liberatore-Randy Arozarena trade?
In my opinion, yes. I think a lot of people would look at it and say, that Randy's been a very good player and doing all of these things for the past couple of years. But my question that I would ask now is, where would Randy fit in this lineup if he was here? Is he better than some of the players we have? He's currently batting .223 for Seattle. Is that better than some of the alternatives that we have? And if Libby wasn't pitching the way that he is, who would be filling his role there? Now, I know there's other young guys that probably could take that spot. But when you look at it as a whole, Libby as a starter looks like a completely different pitcher than he does as a relief pitcher.
It's interesting because I remember that last weekend in spring training when they announced that Liberatore was moving into the rotation. Everybody kind of did what? Because he had made one start right at the end of spring training, and there just was never a thought of any idea. Even though they always say we're going to have him stretched out coming into spring as a starter, there really I don't think was really any serious consideration given to that until we got to right to the very end of spring training. But you could say that he's right there with Sonny Gray, not taking Steven Matz out of the equation since he really hasn't been a starter other than a couple of games, mostly in the bullpen. But you have to say that Liberatore is right there as been the best Cardinal starter this season.
He's been really good. And I think the biggest thing about him is as a starter, he's been allowed to relax and develop his routine. And he's talked about it. And it's made it a lot easier of a transition for him because he knows, I know what days I'm coming to the ballpark and I'm pitching, and I know what days that I'm not. And I'm sure, you look at somebody like Steven Matz, who's been very well too, but I'm sure it's not easy on him to go back and forth. And I'm sure it wasn't on Libby for a few years either.
Well, Matz, of course, has the advantage of being an older pitcher, so he's got more experience, and maybe not necessarily experience in that role, but just experience as a pitcher, experience just living life. So he's been able maybe to handle that adjustment a little bit more. The thing about Liberatore, the two things that I think about that stands out about him is you look at the innings pitched so far this season, 38 strikeouts, only 6 walks, which is very impressive. The concern about him as a starter always was the fact that he dominated in a relief role against left-handed pitchers, but had a lot of trouble facing right-handed batters. He's been able to solve that. And you go take away his first 2 starts, which again, he kind of still getting his feet wet. He's got a 1.88 ERA his last 5 starts, 7 combined runs allowed in those 5 starts. So I don't think he can pitch any better than he has pitched.
And what's interesting is I realize he hasn't had a lot of games under his career, but for his career numbers, he's got 2 highs in strikeouts per 9 at 8.3 and strikeout to walk ratio at 6.3 strikeouts per walks. That's incredible numbers that you want to see. The question that I'm curious is, who do you give the credit to this by putting Libby as that starter? Is that a Mo move? Is that an Ollie move? Is it Dusty Blake for working with him for so long? Or is it Libby for settling down and being himself? Like, somebody should get credit for making that call.
Yeah.
Who gets it?
You know what? That's a good question. I don't know the answer. I suspect it's kind of a combination of all of that. I don't know that there was any one person pumping the, gas pedal saying he has to be a starter. I never heard that. So I got to think it was just born out of a conversation that they had toward the end of spring training. Let's give it a start. And if we're going to give all these guys an opportunity, let's give him an opportunity to start and see if he can run with it. Here's the thing to keep in mind. Go ahead. The comment
they have said from the beginning that, early on they saw Libby as a starter. That's where they saw him
when they made the trade. Yeah.
So it really wasn't like something out of the ordinary for him to become a starter. It was just kind of out of the ordinary that he was that 5th starter this year right now to start with because he hadn't been prepped in that role before.
Yeah, because he had always been a starter, throughout his baseball career, high school, until ending up in the draft. We got drafted by Tampa, and then all his years in the minor leagues, he had always been a starting pitcher. It was actually the bullpen was the new move for him that kind of settled into that role, and I think was good in that role. But certainly now, I don't think you're going to get him out of the rotation anytime soon. So here's the thing to keep in mind when you're evaluating trades, and as it applies to this Liberatore Arozarena trade. Everybody got all bent out of shape early on because the Arozarena got hot right at time after the trade was made. There was a lot of opinions, and I think justifiably so a little bit in one part of this, that the Cardinals never really gave him much of a chance to play before they traded him. And that's one of the things that we talk about now when they're evaluating players, if they're going to trade him or not. Have they given them enough time to look? So I don't think they really maybe knew entirely 100% what they had in Arozarena, but also that is what would he, even if he got the chance to play in St. Louis, would he have done what he did immediately at Tampa Bay when he had that great playoff series, became the the all-star player in those playoffs and that kind of stuff. But my point being this: time that trade was made, January 9th, 2020, Arozarena was 25 years old, just about heading into what you consider baseball players' prime years. Liberatore was 20. So I think now Liberatore is 25, which is the exact same age as Arozarena was when he got traded. So maybe now is about the time to start figuring out what's the difference between these two players and who really benefited from that trade.
And that's what the interesting thing about evaluating trades is. Sometimes you can't see the value of them right away, right? And that's what makes it unique and interesting at the time. And people could have whatever speculation reason that Arozarena was traded at the time, but could he have helped us for those first couple years? Potentially, yes. But in the long run, are we going to get more life out of Libby over the next 5 to 10 years than we would have a Rosarina over those 5 to 10 years? And I think the answer is yes. And that's where I think it becomes a benefit in the trade world, right? It's kind of like when you're evaluating the trade that brought in Adam Wainwright here. He was the throw-in player to be named later, and so at the time of that trade, Jason Markey was probably the highlight of it. But then you look back on it, who was probably the winner of that trade? Adam Wainwright. So sometimes it takes 10, 15, 20 years, give or take, on the life of the player to figure out how they are, right?
Especially when you're trading a minor leaguer for an established player. I mean, I remember the Detroit Tigers, don't forget, traded John Smoltz when he was like in rookie ball or A-ball or something. He becomes a Hall of Fame pitcher. I mean, you hear stories like that all the time.
How did Cardinal fans react when Brolio was traded for Brock when it first happened?
we traded him for who? For what? Yeah.
Turn around now and how do you evaluate the trade, right? So that's what I'm saying.
Greatest trade in Cardinal history. So.
But it was very controversial at the time, was it not?
It was. I mean, I was only 8 years old at the time, but
I'm not saying you've been covering baseball for a long time.
I did not cover that trade for the Globe.
I didn't say you were covering that trade. I'm just saying that sometimes
I've covered a lot of them, but not that one.
The thing about baseball is because of the minor leagues, because of trades, sometimes the evaluation of things take longer than in other sports, football, hockey. I mean, football, hockey, whatever it may be, you see those trade impacts right away when they happen because they don't have.
You're trading a major leaguer for a major leaguer, basically. Yeah.
Yes.
In most cases.
So it's a different evaluation of talent throughout the process.
And that's one of the things that we get about minor league baseball is you go out there and watch those guys play. That's what the teams are doing. The teams are evaluating those guys and deciding who do they think is going to be a guy that they can build on and count on, and who is a guy that probably is just filling out a roster spot because you have to have a third baseman on every team. You have to have a center fielder on every team, whatever. But they don't really consider those guys prospects. But sometimes some of those guys surprise you. So
and that's what makes it hard is everybody evaluates talent different, right? That's why, like when you look at the draft every year, right? And these top 5 can't miss prospects, can't miss players. Well, okay, where's Shelby Miller nowadays? Where's Tyler Green? Some of these big high first round draft picks that just didn't pan out. But then, hey, JJ Weatherholt's making a splash right away. So I think it just kind of everybody progresses differently when they get drafted.
And I know the other pitcher that has kind of caught your eye about how he's turned things around lately is Sonny Gray. Obviously, a stellar performance on Wednesday.
Very good, right? And I was just looking at the numbers here. If you compare the over the last 30 days, Matthew Libator 1.88 ERA, Sonny Gray 2.97. I mean, between the two, that's really where you need to be. If you can get everybody else there, then you're fine. But again, a starter over the length of his career, it generally is not going to have a sub-3 ERA. That means they're really good and like Cy Young candidate. But if you got a starter that's low 3s over the course of a season, you're doing really good. And that's a good sign all the way through. So I think that the positive things to look for are both of those guys. And again, the thing that jumps out to me about Libby is over the last 30 days, so 5 games for him, 28 innings, 27 strikeouts. Sonny Gray, 30 innings, 28 strikeouts.
We're getting some swinging stuff, which we always talk about that this club didn't have a whole lot of.
That, to me, that's what wins in the postseason, swing and miss. Pitch to contact doesn't work in the postseason, and we've seen that, right? Because when you look at the Cardinals in the postseason the last couple of years, the offense has gone very cold, and the pitching hasn't been able to keep it within a reasonable amount of runs. And so if you have pitchers like this with swing and miss type stuff that aren't walking guys, I think that goes a long way. So to me, this club is trending in the right direction. You're back to 500. There's some positive signs that they are looking in the right direction, but there's a few more pieces to figure out.
So I think the next move that you and I both would like to see, and I don't think we're going to see it anytime soon, is we'd like to see a couple of changes in that starting rotation behind Gray and Libator, and that would be involving Michael McGreevy and Steven Matz.
I don't know what more they can do, right? They've pitched fantastically well for you in every spot that you've needed them, and I don't know what more Eric Fetty can show that isn't getting the job done. Now, I will say this. I'm not a Miles Michaelis fan, but he has actually looked pretty good the last few starts. You take out that first start that he got rocked, he's actually been serviceable for this season, and I am impressed with that. I will say that. But Fetty to me is the one who really just, again, I was looking at the same numbers over the last 30 days. In 28 innings, he's got 17 walks and 18 strikeouts.
So I think part of the problem, you've got two ready replacements for him in McGreevy and or Matz.
What I don't understand is, if you're okay with Matz coming out of the bullpen, what's the difference in giving Matz that starting spot and let Fetty try to just work an inning or two at a time out of the bullpen to see if he can regain some confidence or figure something out? Because that's what Libby said, that he learned how to attack guys in the bullpen differently. Well, now he's realized that he can have the confidence to attack the guys the same way he was in the bullpen as a starter, and it really helped him throughout this. Well, maybe that's something that could restart Fetty. And I know that the Cardinals have always liked him and thought he was great when they saw him in the KBO league. So I know they want to give him this runway, but he's not one of the younger guys that we're counting on for this team to become something for a long time.
Cardinals did make one roster move. It has not been officially announced, but it was on the minor league transactions page that they've optioned Luken Baker to Memphis, and all indications are that they're going to activate Ivan Herrera off the injured list. He's been on a rehab assignment in Memphis when they get to Washington on Friday night. Couple thoughts on that. Number one, Baker really wasn't getting much of a chance to play. Maybe DHing here once in a while, but especially with Burleson getting hot, those opportunities have dried up a little bit. So maybe it's let him go down there and give a couple of weeks of steady at bats, get his swing back, and then he'd be back. We'll see. The thought about Herrera is if you bring him up, and technically you have three catchers on the roster, it does free him up to be a right-handed option as a DH, or also a right-handed bat off the bench, and you still don't sacrifice that backup catcher position. So I can understand the logic for the move. We'll have to see how it works out.
And I think it's probably temporary. If I had to guess, it's probably making sure that Herrera is ready to go behind the plate defensively too. So, do you do it for a week here to just work Herrera in as a DH and let him just get his hitting back and his timing and, rest a little bit more before he comes in there to catch it? That's probably what I see happening. 3, 4 games, 5 games, something like that. And then Pozo goes back down. But, I think it's a test to the fact that Burleson is playing well, and you probably just need to get Luken Baker some at-bats that he's not getting up here.
Well, about Burleson, the Cardinals finally got a home run out of the DH spot this week. They were the last team in the National League without a home run as a designated hitter. I think they're hitting like 202 as a group with like 2 or 3 RBIs, but maybe he gets going a little bit. That'll change that performance and be another good bat in the middle of that lineup.
And the offense is trending in the right direction. You look at these last 5 games that they've won in a row, and in the month of May, and Wilson Contreras is hitting 400. Victor Scott's hitting 390. Brendan Donovan 318. Arenado 316. So those are the guys. Obviously Victor Scott's the one that you're impressed with the level of play because of how young he is. But Wilson, Contreras, Donovan, and Arenado are the 3 staple veterans you need in this lineup to continue to produce. And when they're doing that, things are happening well and they're going good. And that's how you win 5 in a row.
I will bring up a couple of guys, though, who might not be trending in the right direction the way they've gone to the last few games. And that's our friends Jordan Walker and Nolan Gorman. We talk about them every week because I think they're the key pieces in this lineup. Between the 3 of them, you got 3 combined home runs this season. They're both hitting under 200. I just don't know what the Cardinals are going to do about those 2 spots. I really don't. I mean, they keep giving them opportunities to play, but at some point you'd like to see something positive happen. I know Walker got the 2-run hit on Wednesday. Maybe that'll be a sign of the right direction. But he'd only driven in 4. He was 4 for his last 40 with 2 RBIs, I think, before that. So it's and Gorman's out way too much.
And I'm glad they're giving them the runway to keep continuing to play well and or try to get back to playing well. What's interesting to me is the rest of the lineup is hitting around them, which is what's kind of, to me, should help them get it back because the pressure should be off of them a little bit, right? Because the team is still winning while they're not playing very well. Now, they really do need to figure it out because at some point, what do you do, right? Sajasi certainly looks more of the part than Gorman does right now, but which one of them do you see trending long-term as the second baseman of the future? And you would have thought that was Gorman, but if he can't stop striking out, what do you do? And then did you miss the boat on when you could have traded him because he's not playing well?
Yeah, I think that's tough decisions. So I think the Cardinals are going to have to really kind of evaluate. But I don't think there's anything coming soon. I'd be very surprised if there was anything coming shortly. But if you get past, we're getting closer to 1/3 way into the season, and then you get closer into July, you get close to the halfway. Maybe that's enough of a runway to make a decision on those guys. I don't know. It's going to be interesting. Hopefully that the conversation becomes smooth, because hopefully they both start hitting well and get it figured out, and we won't have this conversation. But you also look at it as people will say, well, option to AAA. Well, I just don't know that helps either one of those guys, because it doesn't. Even if they hit at the AAA level, that's not hitting at the big league level. And to me, they just have to prove that they're able to hit and succeed at the big league level, and the only way they can do that is by playing.
And I agree. And Walker had gotten off to a good start here and had been playing well. So I'm hopeful that he can get it back. Gorman, on the other hand, I've not seen anything that impresses me or shows me that he will cut down on the strikeout numbers. And that's a huge key piece to that, right? Is he the next Jeff Kent type player that hits, all he does is hit a home run and strike out every other bat? And maybe that's what can happen. Maybe not. I don't know. But you hope that eventually they turn it around here.
So hopefully we'll get it figured out here. So we're going to turn to our conversation again about our trip to Peoria. Mike, we spent a couple of days up in Peoria watching the Chiefs, working on a couple of different things. So let's, if our producer's ready, let's go ahead and run the little video that we shot, first of the videos that we shot up in Peoria earlier in the week.
So an STL Sports Page road trip, first one of the season here as we head up to Peoria, check out the Peoria Chiefs for a couple of days. Been a couple of fun days.
Has been a couple of fun days. Education Day here today, so it's 4,000 screaming kids. It's an exciting time in minor league baseball.
Try to get the fans here young and get them indoctrinated into baseball. And I know you've spent time in the minor league baseball, part of your career spent with the normal Corn Belters. Minor league baseball, different brand of baseball, but it's something everybody should experience.
Everybody needs to experience minor league baseball, yes. It's a very different brand for sure. You got the promotions, you got cheaper concessions, cheaper tickets. Hey, guys in Peoria here.
Peoria Chiefs are the Class A, High A club for the Cardinals. They made that switch a couple years ago after COVID with Palm Beach. Made sense more from a geographical standpoint. So in the Midwest League, so you're going to see a lot of the top prospects that come through here on their way to St. Louis, and everybody knows that we cover the minor leagues. You're going to see some of these guys that you've read about and seen. And one of those guys, Joshua Baez, who's a young prospect, a second-round pick in 2021. We're going to have a story on him earlier next week, so you can watch for that. And well, so you're going to kind of give some reasons about why people should come to Peoria.
Why you need to check out minor league baseball. Yeah, that's what makes it so important. I'm looking forward to the Baez story. He had a big home run last night. Big kid, should be fun, and should be a fun story on why you want to visit the minor leagues.
Just an easy drive from St. Louis, about 2.5 hours. Actually, the closest by a little bit was over Springfield of the top 3 minor league affiliates. So, encourage you to check out that trip. So, I think the other thing about minor league baseball, Mike, you and I both know that from a fan standpoint, you have to just expect that you're not going to see major league caliber baseball, but if you come in here with the right expectations, you can still have a really good time.
You can have a lot of fun for sure, because like I said, cheaper tickets, you sit closer to the field, better access than you have at Busch, so you get to see a lot of these guys on their journey, which is what makes it exciting then when they get to the big leagues.
So I encourage you to come up to Peoria, as well as all the other Cardinal minor league affiliates, Springfield, Memphis, both easy drives as well. We'll be there later on this summer. So Rains on the Cardinals on the road. Rob Rains reporting here from Peoria.
And that was our little visit up there in Peoria. And one of the things I think was really cool about that trip, Mike, you and I both noticed as we were sitting in the press box watching, we got a little video of this, there's no sound to it.
Yeah, kind of intriguing.
Little machine, yeah.
Little robot to do the chalk the lines there. I thought it was interesting. I'm not sure that many organizations probably have that.
I didn't ask anybody about that. I should have asked somebody about that. But you also noticed, we think there were 3 people actually programming the thing and watching it work, do all the work.
There were 3 people watching it, so I was like, can't 2 people just put the chalk thing down and hit it and put the line and be done just as fast, if not faster, than how long it probably took to program the GPS on that thing?
I'm sure it wasn't easy, but I know it was a good decision. So, and then we got a little snippet, our final the videos from up in Peoria, a little bit of my conversation with Joshua Baez. Good story will be coming up early next week, because he's an interesting guy. I think we'll have an interesting story to tell.
Every single day will help you but you have to find it because you can get lost quick. You know, you play 6 games a week, but it's definitely been a roller coaster. But I love it.
You feel like a couple of times maybe in the past couple of years you did feel a little bit lost when things weren't going?
100%. I had days where I didn't know what to do. Honestly, I felt like coming, you know, from high school, big second rounder. I felt like I had to do everything in 1 month or in 1 year, and that was kind of where I got lost. I took a step back and told myself to relax and to trust the process.
Did anybody help you? So you look forward to that story coming up next week on Joshua Baez. As I say, I think he's got an interesting story to tell. He was a guy, obviously, 3 or 4 years ago when the Cardinals drafted him, was considered one of their top prospects. It's kind of faded a little bit because of the performance hasn't been there. But maybe it's too early. He's still only 21 years old. Still one of the younger players on that ball club.
It is interesting, right? Because you look at it and you're like, hey, you've been playing pro ball for 3.5 years now, but when you're drafted out of high school, that's what happens. And you're still only 21 years old. So there's still plenty of time left for guys like that to develop and get up there and get to the big leagues. And it can happen quickly, right? All of a sudden, you get to a point where you start feeling good and the game just kind of slows down for you. And next thing you know, you're rising through the system pretty quickly.
Also had a good time up there with our good friend Ryan Ludwig, former Cardinal, who's now a roving minor league hitting instructor. So Ryan was in town too, so we spent some time with him as well as Chaim Bloom. Has had some interesting conversations up in Peoria. So, well, Mike, the Cardinals on the road, as we say, first of 9 games come up on Friday night. Eric Fedde will get the start. The Cardinals open that series in Washington. It'll hopefully be the time that they did with that doubleheader sweep in Cincinnati on the last road trip. So hopefully, in a good mood, good frame of mind, having won these 5 in a row, that the results on the road will be better this week than they've been so far.
And hopefully they can wipe the mindset out of how they play on the road and turn that around, because these teams they're playing right now aren't winnable games, right? And so hopefully you can figure that out. But we'll have that on this podcast next time, and you can listen and find this podcast anywhere that you listen to your podcast: Spotify, Amazon, YouTube. Be sure to go in, like, and subscribe to all of those so that you can get the notification when they pop up. It's very easy, both on Spotify and YouTube, to make that happen. So we appreciate
also,
all of that.
And don't forget to go on to the website and sign up for the newsletter as well. A new one will be coming out on Friday. So you got all of our contests, all of our some features that don't appear elsewhere on the website or in the newsletter. So encourage everybody to get that. It comes directly to your email, usually once a week. So it'll be an interesting week. Mike will have it all covered for you here on STLSportsPage.com. Appreciate the visit. We'll talk to everybody soon. Here, thanks for watching this edition of the Reigns on the Cardinals podcast on STLSportsPage.com.